is Bryony Johnson with Ethics Within Photographic Practice, Exploitation of Children Through the Media.
Ethics in photography is a theme that is profoundly discussed. It is a subject that communicates moral principle that governs a person's behaviour or the conducting of an activity. Photographing children dates back to the Victorian period. And throughout time, society and the media has affected how this type of work is portrayed. Some photographers, such as Jo Spence, have taken family as a personal topic to show an intimate side to their work. Spence was an artist who took family snapshots to create her own images because she was aware of the sickness, shame and struggles of everyday life. Other photographers, such as the two I have chosen to explore, Sally Mann and Gary Gross, both appeared to have a completely different interpretation of family and children. These two photographers have caused controversy within the media and art world for different reasons, both relating to their subject. Although considerably exploitive, there is a great interest to who exploits the subject and the children featured. Exploring the aspects to this genre of photography can be portrayed to be an important concept to be knowledgeable of. Both photographers will have their own view on children and will be different from one another, from the basic fact that one is a mother of three and the other is a fashion photographer given the rights to exploit. Photographers such as Sally Mann and Gary Gross look at their subject in a very intimate way. They have been criticised for their work and have been accused of exploiting the children. As an audience, we have got used to images of others without seeing them as us. It's a quote from Martha Rosler, which is from the book Decoys and Disruptions. We have become so desensitised to images that exploit that we forget we actually have the ability to be the subject ourselves. We don't see them to be us anymore. We just see it as a photograph, and a lot of the time we can see past the exploitation, as it can be believed that we are used to seeing this style of image. Sally Mann was heavily criticised for her work, Immediate Family. Critics such as the New York Times said that some of her work hinted at child abuse. The image they believe to hint at it is titled The Damaged Child. The book was published in 1992. The controversy began when Mann looked into themes such as insecurities, loneliness, injury, sexuality and death. All three of her children were under 10 when she created the images. Some people actually accused Mann of publishing pornography. Pat Robertson was part of the Christian Broadcasting Network, and he did not approve of Mann's work. He said that the publication was completely wrong. Selling photographs of children in their nakedness for a profit is an exploitation of the parental role, and the theme is just wrong. Foreseeably, it could be interpreted that this quote to be true. Mann has used her children because they were there, but having them in their natural state has the possibility to take her parental role to her advantage to make a substantial profit. As well as this board of work has been claimed to have made her name due to the publicity it received. However, Mann's children did not believe they were exploited. In one article written by Raymond Sokolov, published in the Wall Street Journal, he used one of Mann's images of her daughter, Virginia. With the images, he used black glass to cover her eyes, nipples and pubic area. When it was published, Mann and Virginia were highly offended and distraught. When this article was viewed by young Virginia, she began to question her mother as to what was wrong with her, and the answer was nothing. Mann herself and her children did not intend to establish exploitation. This can contribute to the consideration that the media and the audience hold power to exploit subjects. Artists need to carefully develop projects and consider how others can read into the work. Even when the participant is pleased by their photographs, even the impact it has on social stigma still needs to be confirmed and not assumed. Is another quote from Rosler, which can be read to be arguable. Just because the subject is content with the work does not mean that it's completely acceptable. We need to think carefully about the way we portray our subjects and the impact it has on society in which it will be viewed. A lot of artists establish an artefact based on something that is present in their life, such as the children. It can be identified as something that is personal to them. If I could be said to have any kind of aesthetic, it's a sort of magpie aesthetic. I just go and I pick up whatever is around. If you think about it, the children were there, so I took pictures of my children. It's not that I'm interested in children that much or photographing them, it's just because they were there. This can be seen to show Mann has no intention of even creating work based on children until she had her own. Using them because they were there is her choice. it can be seen that she should not have been criticised. They are her children and her images, which ultimately make her hold the rights, in which she argued that her work is natural through the eyes of a mother. If they are content and miss the collection as an audience, we can be discouraged to believe that the intent was capable to exploit. However, from a humane point of view, should the images she produced be acceptable for exhibition? They can be incredibly uncomfortable to view. Just because the children were there doesn't necessarily mean that she had the rights to exploit them in this way, and she had the right to produce the photos. In the art world, people have associated it forever with controversy. The viewer reads the photograph and has a potential to believe they could have been seen as pornographic, and this pollutes our minds. Shows that we are in an age where children are wrongly viewed. Its nature is presented in a stylised and stereotypical fashion by the mass media. However, some artists have taken their work too far, and it isn't something personal to them anymore. They exploit children in the name of art, but it's not necessarily their purpose. Photographer Gary Gross battled a court case for some of his work, a series entitled The Woman in the Child. This board of work used by Gross revealed the femininity of prepubescent girls by comparing them to adult women. In autumn of 2009, the Tate model had to withdraw a photo of actress Brooke Shields. The photograph was taken when she was naked at the age of 10. Gary Gross was the original photographer of the image and makes her look like a young woman and not a child. This is what caused the controversy. After the police advised that it was indecent under the Protection of Children Act 1978, the gallery took the image down, even though it had been exhibited elsewhere without any complaint. Referring back to the first Rosler quote about not seeing it as us can back this up. The fact that only some galleries withdrew the image enhances the fact that we are desensitised to seeing it as us. Some of us have become comfortable with this type of image. From an audience point of view, it can be offensive and highly inappropriate, and children should not be portrayed in this way. It can be highly disturbing to see children in their natural state, let alone dressed up to look like something they're not. This type of work can be portrayed to develop insecurities for them. As an audience and artist within the art community, there is rarely an occasion where I believe this should be approved. The photograph was taken in 1975 by Gross for a Playboy publication entitled Sugar and Spice. Gross then claims that Shields designed the photos, and this is just one of 10. A man's image previously shown entitled Jessie at 5 has a similar feel to it. It can be seen that Jessie was half the age of Shields, but again appears to be dressed in a way to make her look older, which is where it can be debated. What's the difference? Both young girls in little to no clothes appearing to look older than their years. Furthermore, in 1981, Brooke Shields' mother sued Gross because he kept on reproducing the image for sales, and she was worried that it was damaging her daughter's reputation. However, in 1978, the child was in a film called Pretty Baby, a film that aroused controversy in the press, where Shields played a child prostitute, and in a section there was a film where her virginity is auctioned. This is when Gross's lawyers argued that the iconic image he took could not play fault in the actress's life, and that she had made a career by allowing herself to be sexualised. As Gross was ruled by a judge to not be a pornographer, Judge Matthew J. Jennings said, "I see no reason why the child should continue to bear the burden imposed by her mother's bad judgment. It is difficult to acknowledge her opinion, as she was the person who signed the contract that allowed Gross to portray her daughter in such light." Within this case, it can be seen that the mother regretted her decision to allow Gross to exploit the child. For girls and boys, the body is the first comprehension of the world. They appeared to the universe through their eyes and hands, and not their sexual parts. This quote shows that children, from certain perspectives, are not sexual beings. Although children have been photographed in bare flesh, which some may view as a sexual perspective, Simone de Beauvoir disagrees and sees it to be the showing of childhood development patterns. Mann would most likely agree with this statement. She photographed her children growing up and experiencing their childhood. Her work was produced innocently, she claims. As a whole, it can be seen that children have been sexualised subjects and exploited due to the publication of images of them in their natural state. Can young children freely give their consent for controversial portraits? Is a point that us as artists need to consider, remembering that they are what people can perceive as true. Until recently, there has been little reason to question photographic accuracy. It is not, as such, the two selected artists who have caused all the controversy, but many artists and the influence of the media on society. Many emerging photographers have been accused of using flesh, sometimes their own, to attract both media attention and the jaded gaze of connoisseurs. Children have been a subject to photograph for hundreds of years, although recently photographs may be read differently because we are in a generation where the crime around the exploitation of children is highly publicised, which shouldn't necessarily change the way we view images. Children being photographed in this way shocks audiences. Although this may be the artistic intention, or in many cases not the intention at all. Sontag says, "Who are the we whose such shock pictures are aimed?" The photographs were made with the photographers considerably aware of the ending in criticism. It could be seen that the photographers produced this work to create such an impact that is going to influence people's thoughts, whether they be positive or a criticism. From a humane point of view, the view of children are seen as innocent beings that should not be exploited through photography or any other form of media. These photographs are able to make people reconsider how children are viewed once they have been exploited. And it is clear from the photographer's views and artistic intentions that these images should be seen as an art form rather than exploitation or pornography.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Why have you chosen to talk about this topic?
Well, I started off doing personal versus exploitation because it was something that I was interested in, like what the line was. And then when I came across this in my research, I just couldn't talk about anything else. I was like, I need to talk about this. Like, I was just so passionate about what I saw that I completely got rid of the personal side and just did the exploitation.
How's your research that influenced your practice now?
Well, for my final major project, I was doing something that's personal to me, which is where my first topic came from. But it made me reconsider about what I was photographing for it because it's based on my personal journal. I don't want to completely exploit myself and the people written about in my journal to everyone. So it's made me more aware of what to include and what to exclude.
Yeah, what's your personal opinion of Simon as well? Obviously you've investigated her critically. What do you actually think? Is she exploited her children?
I did a research project on her in first year and I didn't think she exploited it. And then when I was, over the past week, when I was finding more images to include, and I saw the image of Jessie at 5, and she has like a pearl necklace on, and she looks like she's wearing makeup, I was like, well, what's the difference between that and Gary Gross's photo? And then my opinion completely changed to that, to be quite honest.
What do you think of the desensitisation in society? What do you think has caused that to happen?
The publication of it. I feel like we see a lot, we hear a lot about child pornography, we hear a lot about children being exploited, and it's just one of those things that you hear so much about that you stop reacting because you hear about it pretty much on a daily, weekly basis, and you just become, I feel like you become numb to the information, the images you see.
Thank you very much.